Good evening. When the Chancellor unveils the government's spending plans on Wednesday, expect some audible groans from City Hall. Faced with growing pressure from reform in the north, the Labour government is expected to turn its back on a Labour mayor in a Labour stronghold and reject calls for investment in the capital's infrastructure and policing. Sir Sadiq Khan was hoping to persuade ministers to fund an extension of the Docklands Light Railway to Thamesmead and a bigger budget for the Met. But as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports, London's begging bowl is likely to go ignored.
When it comes to public transport, Thamesmead is a long way from anywhere. There's no train, no tube, no tram, just buses. It might be only 12 miles from central London, but it takes an age to get there. Janet's daily commute by car and train is an hour and a half each way.
It's crazy considering how near we live. If I lived right out in Kent, near the coast, I'd get to London quicker. And I think people think, well, London is OK. But really, if you come out here, it's not OK at all. We're quite poor for transport in this area of London.
There is a plan. Transport for London wants to extend the Docklands Light Railway from Beckton in East London to two new stations, Beckton Riverside and Thamesmead south of the river. House builders and housing associations are keen for it to happen, promising thousands of new homes and jobs.
If the DLR comes across to Thamesmead Town Centre, it will give us an opportunity to take forward what we've already master planned, which is for 15,000 new homes for London and a new neighbourhood which would also have more leisure facilities, shops, education facilities, a real opportunity for a brand new neighbourhood in London.
The Mayor and TfL were hoping the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, would give it the go-ahead when she outlines government spending on Wednesday. But it seems London is about to be snubbed. A source close to the Mayor suggested there will be nothing for major infrastructure projects in London. No money for the DLR or Bakerloo line extension, and also no extra cash for the police. The source described that as unacceptable. When Sadiq Khan launched his re-election campaign last May, he repeatedly talked up London's prospects with a Labour Mayor and a Labour government.
We can go from rowing against the tide of a Tory government to having the winds of a Labour government at our backs.
His City Hall opponents aren't surprised this week's spending review will be disappointing for Londoners.
Rachel Reeves has failed to deliver the growth she promised, so she doesn't have the finances to give to the Mayor. And of course, the Mayor has stopped asking. When there was a Conservative government, he asked for much more money and actually was given more money, particularly for housing. He needs to make the same ask of this government, as why he cannot be surprised if they don't deliver for him.
The idea that a Labour Mayor of London and a Labour Chancellor aren't working closely together is nonsense, and I know there'll be lots of meetings to make sure London benefits. I've spoken to the Chancellor and her team over the last few weeks. I'm confident they understand the importance of growth in London, but like everyone, we're all in a competition to make sure we get the most benefits for our area.
The DLR extension has a price tag of £1.5 billion, making it one of the cheaper big-ticket items on the Mayor's wish list. Even if it fails to get the government's backing this time, the project supporters say they're not giving up.
Now, Simon, you've spoken to the Mayor's team today, so what's the mood about all of this?
Well, I asked City Hall on a scale of 1 to 10 how angry the Mayor was, and they declined to give me a number, but I imagine privately he's pretty annoyed. Sadiq Khan already seems to have decided the outcome of the comprehensive spending review is unacceptable as far as London is concerned, and there'll be more briefings from City Hall this afternoon warning ministers that if they don't fund infrastructure projects in London, it will not only help them damage economic growth, it'll stop them reaching their housing targets. We still don't know how much money the Met's going to get. We think that might fall short of what's wanted. Although I'm told there is a glimmer of hope that TfL might get a longer-term funding deal, which might help it fund some improvements, if not necessarily those big infrastructure projects.
All right, Simon, thanks very much.
Next tonight, it's Labour versus Labour as City Hall makes no secret of the fact they're not impressed by what's coming in the government's spending review tomorrow. Speculation is growing that Rachel Reeves is set to snub the capital with no major uplift in funding for the police or money for TfL's expansion projects. Sources close to the Mayor say there's a danger of slipping towards what they called the Tories' damaging anti-London approach. Far from preparing for battle, though, Sadiq Khan had quite the distraction today as he officially became Sir Sadiq. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the latest.
The Right Honourable Sir Sadiq Khan, for political and public service,
For a brief moment, London's mayor put politics on pause, watched by his mum, wife and daughters. Sir Sadiq is the only one of London's 3 mayors to win 3 elections, and the only one to be knighted. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not proud," he said afterwards.
I was raised on a council estate, went to state primary and secondary schools. I get the privilege and honour to be the mayor of this city, supporting Londoners, and for His Majesty to recognise the work that we've done is just something special.
But behind the look of delight on the mayor's face, there was real anger about how London could lose out in tomorrow's government spending review. Sir Sadiq, perhaps understandably, didn't want to talk about it inside the palace. But in a very public spat, a source close to the mayor accused the Treasury of being short-sighted and damaging the economy. An extraordinary red-on-red attack by a Labour mayor on a Labour government. The mayor and his team fear London will lose a grant called the Shared Prosperity Fund, which helps organisations like Better Bankside. This year it was given £250,000 for its project, the Southwark Climate Collective, which helps firms decarbonise.
If the funding stops, we have to stop that programme, and it is really difficult to get those businesses back involved again once we've stopped.
The mayor and his officials also think the Chancellor will refuse to back the Bakerloo line extension to Lewisham, the DLR extension to Thamesmead, the West London Orbital Railway from Hendon to Hounslow. And on top, there'll be insufficient funding for the Metropolitan Police, and the mayor won't be allowed to levy a hotel tax on tourists.
London's really, really important. So are other parts of the country. So are all of our 4 nations of the UK. I know the Chancellor has been listening to all of the representations she's had from different people, and we'll see the results tomorrow.
I can't tell you how concerned I am about the money going into the Metropolitan Police. There is not enough money. Sadiq Khan promised us with the Labour government more money would go into policing. We'll have to wait and see.
In what appeared to be a rebuke to City Hall, the Treasury pointed out it had given Transport for London £500 million in the budget. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Good evening. Levelling down London is not the answer. That was the mayor's response to the government's spending review today, as he criticised Labour for failing to invest in infrastructure projects in the capital. There was more money promised for Transport for London, but not enough, Sir Sadiq says, to deliver economic growth. It means projects like extending the DLR and upgrading the Bakerloo line won't be happening anytime soon. More money for the Met is on the cards too, but no specifics yet about how much or whether it'll be enough to cover the force's £260 million black hole. With all the details, here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
For more than half a century, these trains have rattled up and down the Bakerloo line. They're well past their sell-by date and should have been replaced years ago, but the money's never been there.
They're old, they're uncomfortable. Especially for tourists coming into London, it's not very impressive.
There's a lot of noise when you travel. I have noticed a lot of graffiti on the trains recently. So yes, definitely needs a revamp.
I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
London wasn't expected to get any big handouts from the Chancellor today, but she did announce £2.2 billion for TfL.
Today I'm announcing a 4-year settlement for Transport for London to provide certainty and stability for our largest local transport network to plan for the future.
So what will that buy? It should be enough money to at least begin the process of ordering new trains for the Bakerloo line. But it's not enough money to buy new signals for the Piccadilly line, and nowhere near enough money to build the DLR extension to Thamesmead or the Bakerloo line extension to Lewisham. As well as Transport for London's 4-year funding deal, the Met Police will get more money, but how much isn't clear. And 12,000 civil servants in London are to be moved out. Sir Sadiq Khan, knighted only yesterday, has been careful not to publicly criticise the government since it was elected, but in a statement today said, "I remain concerned that this spending review could result in insufficient funding for the Met and fewer police officers."
The Mayor said before the government was elected that there will be no limit to what we can achieve under a Labour government. Clearly there is a serious limit because we're not getting the money we need in London.
The threat to 1,700 police jobs will be of concern to Londoners like Aisha. She had her phone stolen in Oxford Street, but was able to track it and gave the information to the police.
They basically just gave me a crime reference number, said that they'd stay on top of it, and just basically told me to not go to any of the locations, which obviously I didn't feel safe enough to do anyway. But yeah, not really much was done. I didn't receive any follow-up. Even when I gave them the last address that it definitely stayed at for a while.
Senior officers and managers at Scotland Yard are still crunching the numbers to see what today's extra money means. Will it be enough to plug the £260 million financial shortfall, which the Commissioner has warned will mean cuts?
A 2.3% increase in the spending as part of the spending review just isn't enough. I don't know what that's going to look like as the years come on, and the devil will be in the detail, but simply not enough for the communities of London or police officers.
The Treasury said it recognised the DLR and Bakerloo line extensions would generate economic growth and new housing, so it would work with TfL to explore options. Sadiq Khan dismissed that, saying it wasn't a commitment.
That's a Simon, not particularly London-centric, as you covered there. But any real misses for the council?
Let's talk about the gains first. The government will argue that London will benefit, like the rest of the country, from extra money for the NHS and affordable housing. But the Chancellor seemed to suggest that for too long, London and the South East have had it too good at the expense of the rest of the country, which is probably why those big infrastructure projects haven't been given the green light. Now, the 4-year funding deal for TfL is a win. It's something the Mayor has been calling for some time, ever since COVID, when TfL lost all that money and needed emergency bailouts. But there's probably not enough money to carry out all the improvements. And then there's Hammersmith Bridge. A lot of MPs are very disappointed that the government didn't announce today that there would be a funding plan to rebuild and finally reopen to traffic Hammersmith Bridge.
Speaking as a London MP, I'm so disappointed that we didn't get more for London. There are so many infrastructure projects across London crying out for investment, not least, of course, Hammersmith Bridge in my own constituency, which has now been closed to traffic for over 6 years. Local people and people across London urgently want to see that reopened. Instead, the Chancellor reiterated her support for expanding Heathrow Airport, which nobody wants.
London's economy probably won't benefit either from the loss of 12,000 civil service posts. Their jobs are going to other parts of the country. There are some important former Home Office building. 102 Petty France is one of 11 buildings which the government plans to sell off. And you can see why it's a prospect which makes Treasury mouths water. The total value of all 11 buildings they want to sell off is about £100 million.
Goodness me, that is quite a lot. Simon, thank you.
Good evening. Police in India have found at least one survivor from a Gatwick-bound flight that crashed shortly after takeoff. The plane was carrying 242 people, including 53 British nationals. More than 200 bodies have been recovered so far. The Air India flight was departing from Ahmedabad Airport. Footage shows the Boeing aircraft losing altitude over a residential area before crashing and being engulfed in flames. Police say there could be more fatalities and injuries on the ground. London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan described the crash as deeply distressing. He says he's in close contact with the government and Indian High Commission. With dozens of British passengers on board, families here have faced an anxious wait for news. Well, in a moment, we'll be live with our reporters at Gatwick Airport and also in Neasden, home to London's largest Hindu temple. But first, with all the latest developments, here's Simon Harris. And of course, a warning, his report contains images you may find distressing.
The flight to Gatwick had barely made it into the air when it was in serious trouble. Shortly after taking off from Ahmedabad, Air India Flight 171 crashed into a residential suburb. There were 242 people on board. As the wreckage erupted into a fireball, there seemed little hope of survivors. The Foreign Secretary in London briefed MPs.
We know that British nationals were on board, and Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that the FCDO is working urgently with local authorities to support British nationals and their families.
So it's our last night in India.
The victims of the crash are believed to include Jamie Meek and Fingal Greenlaw. The married couple ran a wellness centre in Vauxhall. Shortly before takeoff, they posted another video on social media.
We are at the airport, just boarding. Goodbye, India. Goodbye.
In Ahmedabad, the rescue effort focused on firefighting and saving those injured on the ground. The aircraft came down among buildings. Its tailplane was on a roof. And then extraordinary pictures emerged of a possible survivor from the plane. Vivek Kumar Ramesh, a Briton, was travelling with one of his brothers and sitting in seat 11A. He's called his family in the UK from his hospital bed.
When the plane crashed, he video called my dad saying, "Oh, the plane's crashed." I'm not sure how I made out of the plane. He was confused and everything. He's like, "I can't see my other brother. I don't see any other passengers or anything."
At Willesden in North London, regulars at the Brent Indian Community Centre held a prayer meeting.
Everybody is feeling sad about the family behind, and they don't know what's actually happening.
We do know some people who were on the plane as well, so that was even worse for us to bear the grief. But it's a difficult moment, and we don't know what message to pass them. All we can do is pray.
The prayers were followed by a minute's silence. The plane should have touched down at Gatwick shortly after 6 p.m. this evening. The airport opened an emergency centre for families expecting to meet their loved ones in arrivals. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner has a good safety record. Pilots are trained in simulators to deal with emergencies on takeoff.
The whole thing was over within about a minute by the look of it. So whatever went wrong would undoubtedly have startled the pilots, and that's a factor to be taken into account.
In a message on X, London's mayor tweeted, "The news from India is deeply distressing. My thoughts are with the family and friends of those on board the Air India flight. I can only imagine how devastating this must be." In Ahmedabad, crash investigators have begun trying to find out why the plane failed to climb into the sky. One line of inquiry is whether the flaps on the wings were in the correct position. Simon Harris, ITV News.
But first, it's estimated to cost Londoners over £130 million a year. Fare dodging on the Underground has become a political hot potato ever since Conservative MP Robert Jenrick decided to film himself confronting offenders for his social media. Well, now ITV London has been invited along to see how TfL is trying to tackle the problem. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
At the far end of the gate line, a man in a blue top tailgates the person in front to push through the ticket barrier. Unfortunately for him, he runs straight into an enforcement team. At first, he claims he forgot to tap out, but after saying he has a hospital appointment, he gets away with a maximum fare charge of £9.50. Transport for London estimates 3.5% of all journeys on its tubes, trains, trams and buses are made by fare dodgers. That's more than 122 million journeys a year where passengers aren't paying. TfL claws back some money from fines and penalty fares, but it still costs the organisation more than £130 million a year in lost revenue.
It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting, you know what I mean? I pay my tax and everything, so people should they should pay, everyone should pay.
I've got 2 mouths to feed, so why should people get free travel if I can't?
It bothers me that I even see the staff members watching it happen, and it feels they do it with impunity.
I can understand it, because I think life is tough, it's very expensive. So I think young people are struggling.
It's unfair, everybody needs to pay. It costs a lot of money to travel, and these people are trying to ride for you free.
Excuse me, do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier and pay? But everyone else...
Last month, the Conservative MP Robert Jenrick was filmed confronting fare dodgers at Stratford Station in East London. One stop along the Central Line at Leighton, revenue protection officers, backed up by enforcement support officers, were trying to catch persistent offenders. Are you doing enough to stop it?
Well, we have exercise like the one you see here today happening every day across the network, but we're also always innovating and finding new ways to tackle some of the new forms of fare evasion we see.
Ticket barriers are being redesigned to make it harder to push them open, and TfL is talking to social media firms like TikTok to try to stop videos which glamorise so-called bumping. Last year, 80,000 fare dodgers were taken to court or made to pay a £100 penalty fare.
Where people lash out, swing, try to use instruments to, it can get pretty volatile, and we're given particular training to try to diffuse those situations as well. But we do have instances where we do have to physically intervene and carry people out of the station.
TfL has set itself a target to cut the number of fare dodgers from 3.5% of all journeys to 1.5% by 2030. Simon Harris, ITV News, Leighton.